As soon as I started going on nights out, I fell in love with it. I loved finding new DJs, meeting new people who were into the same music as me, and not knowing where the night would end up. According to the 2019 Global Drug Survey, in our lifetime, us Brits will consume more cocaine, MDMA, ketamine, and nitrous oxide per person than anywhere else in the world. My generation grew up with cautionary tales, club closures, and just say no. But it hasn't stopped many of us from seeing drugs as just another standard part of a night out, even if you're not taking them yourself. But with party drugs like MDMA being found stronger than ever, what starts off as a fun night can end up going tragically wrong. The Rainbow Venues is an iconic group of venues in Birmingham, my university city. Tons of big DJs found their name at Rainbow, and it pretty much put Birmingham on the map in terms of nightlife. I spoke with founder, Lee McDonald, about how the venue found itself at the centre of the drug debate.
First time I walked into the Rainbow Courtyard, my head absolutely fell off. It was everything that I could have ever imagined it to be, the way we described it. It was al fresco, it was raw, there was natural brick, there was debris coming from the ceiling. It was perfect for a daytime party. So we did the Sunday daytime party and it went crazy. We had people queuing up around the block all the way down to the Old Crown. And that was when Below was born, which was the name of the party. I come to own the Rainbow pub because it wasn't doing so well, so I made them an offer. I definitely paid too much. I didn't know what I was doing, wet behind the ears, got excited. Ran around and asked everybody I know for money and managed to get the money together and then bought the Rainbow pub, which consequently come with the courtyard, and that's how the Rainbow brand started. We eventually outgrew the pub. We got a warehouse down the road, and that's where the Rainbow warehouse began. That developed into the garden, which had many guises. It was a beach with 40 tons of sand, tropical trees, etc. With the trains going over the top. Not quite a beach with the aeroplanes, but with Centro trains going to Walsall, coming over your head, everyone would cheer. It was a fantastic space. It was home to some Birmingham talent, which made their name in that space.
But in November 2017, everything changed for the Rainbow Venues.
Tragically, we had a death in 2015 and then we had another one in 2017. And because there was 2 deaths through drug overdose within the space of 2 years, they decided to revocate the licence. Both times the venue was not at fault, and in the hearing we were told that they couldn't find us at breach in any way. However, somebody has still managed to get a small pill into the establishment, and they thought that was enough to close down the venue. The Rainbow had 15 venues, and the Rainbow Warehouse was the catalyst for everything else, and it's what financed all the new projects. When we took that away, we couldn't complete the buildings that we'd started, but we still had rent to pay on them. So the massive income stopping coming in, so we had to make redundant 50, 60 staff and started looking at ways of how we can relinquish the leases, because we were PG'd, personal guaranteed against it, which means in theory if you don't keep up your payments on the venue you can lose your house. So that's the position we were faced with. I don't think when they made the decision that day they had any idea of how they were affecting people's lives. There's several companies around me that have had to go bankrupt. All they've done is exactly what I said they would do, move the problem elsewhere. So if you close down the Rainbow, the same promoters, the same DJs will just go to the next venue and you'll have another death. And tragically that's what happened at Lab 11.
The revocation of Rainbow's licence hasn't seemed to solve the issue of drug overdoses in clubs. And similar tragic events have occurred in other Birmingham nightclubs since. I contacted Dr. Adam Winstock from the Global Drug Survey to find out if a different approach is needed.
So the Global Drug Survey runs the largest drug survey in the world, and it grew out of the Mixed Mag Drug Survey that I started in 1999. And the reason that I started doing that was that my job was working with people whose lives were ruined by drugs. But I could see in the people around me and just with people I knew that clearly there's lots of people out there who use drugs without ruining their lives. But no one paid any attention to them. But within that group, there were people who would end up in the A&E department. There were people who lost control. But basically, unless you were committing crime, you know, sharing HIV, governments weren't interested. And there just wasn't any information. And as a doctor, lots of people started asking me questions around the drugs they were using. And I went, why is it this information isn't available? And I looked around and I realised there actually wasn't a place that people who like taking drugs but are interested in their own health and well-being could go to get information.
I think one of the interesting things is I was reading one of the findings of the Global Drug Survey, and in 2016 they said that it's the worst time in a generation to be taking MDMA, and I was wondering why that is.
Yeah, look, I look back at that time worst, and it was referring to the fact that the risk of seeking emergency medical treatment had never been higher, which meant because pills were so strong, it was never so easy to take so much. And, you know, people instead of taking maybe 125 milligrams over a night were taking 200, 300, 400 milligrams a night, and they were ending up in A&E, which for me is a fairly lousy evening. I also accept that for a generation of people who'd maybe had really crack pills, the appearance of really good quality MDMA made for a cracking night. But the reason it ended up being lousy is no one had told them how to take good quality drugs. Like the UK historically has been Europe's dumping ground for shitty drugs. And we're seeing the same with coke now. You know, cocaine 5 years ago, street purity was 10, 20%. Now it's 50 or 60. And that takes people's brains and hearts and, you know, minds a little bit by surprise. That's why you're getting increased ambulance call-outs. You're getting more people seeking treatment. You're getting more people getting panic attacks and chest pain. Because no one had ever said better quality drugs need to be treated with greater respect. You need to chop smaller lines. You need to not get so pissed. But no one's giving that information. They're just going, drugs are bad. Whether it's good quality or bad, it's a class A, don't take it. That's not useful.
Anyone's Child is a lobby group made up primarily of people who, in their words, have had their lives wrecked by the current drug laws. They were gathering outside Westminster, and I was invited to come down and join them.
It's the 29th of November 2014. My boys went to a football match in Manchester. One of them was at university in Aberystwyth and the other one was living in London. They travelled up to Manchester, met up to go to the football match, and they didn't come back. One of them had bought some MDMA powder on the dark web. They'd taken it together and it had killed them. And my immediate thoughts were, you know, I don't want this happening to anybody else. Rather than set something up on my own, I found out about Anyone's Child, and I've been campaigning with them, you know, ever since. Now, nobody's condoning it, but what I'm saying is that people are taking it. They're prepared to take the risk, and this risk is unnecessary. We may not like it, but we can make it safe. And what is happening at the moment is, you know, there's lots of other people who are campaigning, who've lost, you know, their sons, their daughters. One of the real shocks I got after my boys died was that the people, his friends at university, told him where he bought the drugs. They were shocked that he died and were really obviously terribly upset about what had happened. But they weren't going to stop taking drugs. They just wanted their drugs to be safe. And that is the reality. They don't want to stop taking drugs. They're going to continue taking drugs. They're going to put their lives at risk. Governments and you know, the medical profession need to understand this. If you could stop it, if you could stop the supply, you know, if the threat of being made a criminal worked, you know, then it would have worked by now. But it isn't working, and it's getting worse.
Ray's heartbreaking story was one of many I heard that day. I spoke to Mick, whose son was arrested on drug-related charges whilst at university.
It was his turn to collect some ecstasy to go to the Ritz. And then the police burst in one night. And he said, that's some ecstasy which I got. It's my turn. It's on the mantelpiece. And what's the other pot? Oh, people put money in it so the next chap can buy some more. Well, they put him down as a supplier, took him to the Crown Court, and he had to plead guilty to intent to supply drugs, just as though he was a drugs baron. He got 2.5 years in prison. It was unjust. Couldn't really face having to justify himself to somebody who might think of him as a criminal. He wasn't a criminal, he was a lad at university. And this, I don't think will ever go away from him. We reckon now that about between 75 and 95% of the people in prison are there for drug-related offences. Nobody knows that because the courts refuse to record a mugging or a burglary as a drug-related offence. They call it assault. And they don't get it.
The government's current approach to drugs is clearly not working, and it seems to me that it's causing more harm than good. I reached out to Steve Rolls. Steve is a policy analyst for Transform, a charity that aims to change the way drugs are controlled.
So in terms of the actual environments in which people are taking drugs, there are basic things you can do in terms of providing information, providing access to welfare and emergency services, non-judgmental access to those services, and providing just safer environments. Now, clearly, there are problems with some of that provision in terms of licensing, because if you're providing drug information on site and you're providing what might be seen as safer drug-using environments on site in nightclubs, that is kind of acknowledging that drug use is happening in nightclubs, which may violate your licensing terms, which are often based on the premise of zero drug use, zero tolerance. There is also this problem that we have, or that central government seems to have, that anything that moves towards a more pragmatic harm reduction approach and away from this kind of punitive, rather moralistic approach, criminal justice-led approach, will somehow encourage drug use. If you make drug use easier or safer, you're somehow encouraging it. And I find that a really offensive concept, not only because it's not true, there really isn't any evidence that increased harm reduction increases drug use. But if you look at what the implications of that are, they're actually actively maintaining a system that increases harm as a way of educating young people. They're sacrificing lives as a form of prevention. It's often suggested that young people are reckless and don't care or are incapable of making responsible decisions, and I just don't accept that. No, young people don't want to die. They don't want to put themselves at risk. They want to have fun. They are hedonistic. They're seeking pleasure. They're seeking new experiences. And if you give them the tools to make responsible decisions, they will do that.
Each one of the flowers laid outside Westminster represents a life that's been cut short due to drugs. I wonder how many could have been prevented if testing was more readily available. By closing clubs, we're just closing our eyes to the problem. We need to educate, not revocate, to keep young people safe and keep the music going.